In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to 3D print on an Afinia 3D printer. First thing we're going to do is locate the Afinia Studio software on your desktop. Go ahead and double click. On this screen, I want you to go ahead and select the build icon on the left. And this is your workspace. This actually represents the bed of the printer. So as long as it can fit in this area, it can be printed. Typically we try not to get too close to the edge since the build plate is heated and there tends to be less heat on the edges, which in turn means the model may or may not stick to the plate while it's printing. So we're going to go ahead and load a file. So we're going to come over here to the plus, which is add, and we're going to select this icon called add 3D model. So getting to your STL file, I'm going to show you the long way because you may or may not see your folder here. Everything is on student public, so you can either go to this PC and double click on student public, and you'll also see a shortcut to student public as well. This is also located on your desktop. I'm going to double click on the student public. We're going to go to curriculum, and we're either going to go to Bolt and or your other tech ed teacher depending on where you saved your file. I'm going to go to Bolt Engineering Level 1 and 2. I'm going to open up my first period save here folder for this example and open up my 3D printed part. You'll notice it's a STL file. So what we need to do from time to time is rotate the model. I'm going to go ahead and just rotate the screen and zoom in by rolling my mouse. Since this model here has a flat region on the bottom, it would be best to have the flat part of the model flat on the bed. So this is a step we have to be very careful with. We never want to manually rotate it. Instead, we're going to use some of these functions on the upper right hand corner. So first thing I'm going to do is just left click once on my part. You'll also see this little window pops up telling me the file name and some other information about the part. But once I select this, I'm going to come up to the right hand corner and I'm going to select rotate. Once again, do not manually rotate the part, meaning do not grab this sphere, this orb, and start to click and drag. You'll never get it perfectly flat. Instead, we're going to use the X, Y, or Z options. With this model, I know Y is the option I'm going to use, but I'm going to just show you what the X will do. So I'm going to select X, and most of the time we're doing 90-degree or negative 90-degree rotation. So I'm going to hit 90. And you'll simply notice, actually it worked that time, you'll actually watch the model rotate on a 90-degree axis along the x-axis. Here's what Y will do for me. Once again, that seems to work fine, and then Z will rotate it along the z-axis. So once again, make sure you're using the X, Y, or Z option for rotating. Do not grab this orb and try to rotate it manually. Once I do this step, a lot of times I'll select what's called Autoplace, click it once. And if you had multiple parts on the screen, you would actually want to hit Autoplace to make sure everything is spaced properly. Now in this case, I could start printing, but many times we need to make models of our parts. So I can simply right-click, copy, and make additional copies. Once again, you're making an additional copy to what's already on the plate. So if I made one more copy, I should see 2 total appear. Typically, the one that's lighter in color is the one you've selected. So you'll notice if I click here, this one's now selected. This one's now selected. Same part, just copied it. And if I hit the Autoplace feature again, it'll rotate them, or excuse me, it'll place them accordingly on the build plate. Now I can continue hitting this button multiple times. A lot of times you'll see it change, sometimes you won't, depending on the number of models on the screen. Now this happens from time to time. Another student wants to 3D print at the same time, which is fine. So I'm going to hit Add Model. Let's say I bring in another part. I'm going to use this one right here from another student. I'm going to hit open, and there can obviously be a little bit of confusion as to whose is whose. Well, first of all, let's rotate the model. So I'm going to select it, rotate, and once again, it's either X, Y, or Z. I'll start with X. Okay, X did it. I'll hit Auto Place, and I want to make another copy of this one. So I'm going to right-click and select Copy 1. Now, if I keep hitting Autoplace, things are going to reshuffle and move around, and I'm not sure whose is whose, which one's mine and which one's the other student. So there's a very simple thing to remember. This arrow indicates the front of the 3D printer plate. So as you look at the model and as it's done printing, you can simply click on a model to know whose file is whose. This one's McGuire, this one is Bolt, this one is Bolt as well, and this one is McGuire. So these two belong to another student, and these two here are mine. So when I remove these from the plate, I'll remember which ones actually belong to me. So now let's print. So you'll notice here at the top, I'm using the H400 left. Make sure the printer is on, they're clearly labeled, and most importantly, make sure nothing's on the printer when you print. If you need to switch a printer, the easiest way to do it is to click on this little cog called Settings, and you can simply go to Printer, and if something is on another printer, you can simply switch from one printer to the next. So for example, I can click on the right or I can click on the left depending on which printer is available. And you'll notice the big green check mark will tell us which printer is currently going to be used. So make sure the printer you print to has nothing on it before you start printing. So I'm going to continue using the H400 left, so I'm just going to go ahead and close this. You'll also notice at the top of the screen it says the printer is ready. And I'm going to go ahead and select the print option. So I typically tell students do not change these settings. As long as I've set them, they should remain as they are. But here's a typical setting. Layer thickness, I like to keep it at 0.25. For the infill, you'll see you have four options: 20%, 65%, 80%, and 99%. Most of the things we're printing do not need a solid infill, so I like to keep it at 65%. And these two settings allow us to print things quickly, at the same time looking good and being very stable outcomes at the end. Keep the quality at normal, keep this at 0. Unsolid model should be checked, and no raft should also be checked. So this is a typical setup when you select the print option. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the print button. And you'll notice a few things will happen here. First of all, it's going to send the file to the printer. That takes just a few seconds. And then you'll notice that there's a print time. So to print 4 of these models are going to take 12 minutes and 1 second. A lot of times it'll show you the amount of material it's actually going to consume. It's not giving me a number yet, but that might change. And on this screen, you can either leave it open, or a lot of times I just select OK. Now, you could rotate the model while it's printing, but at this point, you're not going to remove anything. You're not going to shut anything down. A few things are happening up here. This indicator tells me that the nozzle is getting hotter, which is going to extrude the filament. This number here is the temperature of the actual bed that the printer actually prints onto. So this is temperature and temperature. This nozzle typically will get above 200 degrees. The bed will also increase as well in temperature. The bed needs to be warm so that the part sticks to it, and the nozzle needs to get hot to extrude the PLA filament. Now, once the printing actually starts, you could actually remove these parts, and you could actually have another student walk up, select a new printer, and load their parts. Keep in mind that when you delete these parts here, you need to remember which ones were yours. So before anyone deletes anything, you may once again want to click on a part to remember whose is whose, so that if a student were to delete these and actually load their files, you'll remember which ones are yours. So once again, go ahead and continue moving forward, and if you're ready to 3D print, let Mr. Bolt know, and he will have you move to a 3D printing station to begin the process. Good luck.